Hello everyone, welcome to Tidgney's GT Sport Driving School. We're finally at the first episode. Obviously we did the introduction last time. We're now going to look at braking. But before we get into braking, it was nice to hear from Lewis Hamilton at the Monaco World Finals, which is where I've been, just about braking, because he talked about it and was saying that, you know, one of the biggest aspects of his racing, of how he's gone faster and faster and faster, is his braking. So, you know, when he was in karts, his dad would stand 2 or 3 meters further ahead than where the last of the late breakers were and told him to brake there, and slowly he built that up. So we're going to do something similar, and this was always my idea anyway, so it's just nice to hear that Lewis said that. He also talked about braking points as well, which we'll go into a bit later on. But again, you know, patches of grass, changes of colour and barrier, anything like that. He mentioned it, I talk about it, you know, I use different colours. I used a patch of grass at Interlagos on the last corner. As a braking marker. It's the same principle. So it's really nice to hear that, because then I'm like, well, okay, I must be doing something right here. Everything Lewis is saying is what I apply and what I do. So I'm literally telling you guys now, and then hopefully you can apply it, and then some of you may get quicker. You know, if I make the World Finals again or regional finals, I may see some of you there who may not necessarily have been there now. Overall, hopefully the racing then gets better. We will see. But braking, let's talk about braking now, because that's what this episode is all about. So we're going to look at 3 aspects. We're going to look at standard braking. So what do I mean by standard braking? I mean literally just braking at a marker, braking 100%, and then letting the car roll into the corner. It's very, very simple. It's the basics. So we're literally 100% braking, coming off, rolling into a corner. How and what happens to the car? You know, this is the initial part of perhaps learning a track or a time trial or a qualifier. You will initially get that point, and then you will start to progress your braking. So we're going to look at trail braking. Now, trail braking is one of the most important techniques you can learn in racing to improve your lap times and also potentially overtake people and things like that. So we'll go into sort of the idea of what trail braking is, and I'll show you how I apply that constantly, because it is significant. Because what it does is it allows your braking point to go further on into the lap. And at that point, into the corner, sorry. So rather than braking at 100 meters, you might be able to brake at 80 meters. Continue braking towards the apex, and that way you're braking later. So therefore, you're losing less time under braking, and you're always doing something with the car. Then I always say this to people: you should always be doing something and not be in a position where you're not doing anything in a car. Occasionally, that varies. If the car is very difficult to drive, then potentially you have to do that. But otherwise, trail braking is vital to improve your lap time. And then finally, what we'll do is we'll look at how to control oversteer during the braking zone. This is very significant in road cars. So a few weeks ago, we obviously had the Porsche 911 or 991 at Dragon Trail Gardens. And even if you put the brake balance to -5, so all the brake on the front, the car would still be very, very oversteery. So we'll look at how you can control that. I use this technique in the regional finals, believe it or not. The technique I will explain and show, because I was in the Ferrari 458. And again, what it'll do is you'll get a bit of an understanding of how, maybe not just adjusting brake balance as much, but you'll be able to control the car in a different way that you might not necessarily be used to. And it is very counterintuitive as well, so we'll look at that. But first of all, let's go into standard braking. So, you're probably wondering why the hell I'm showing you the driving school. Well, let's be honest. The driving school is the key part of every Gran Turismo. Whether it's called license test or whatever you want to call it, we always look at Gran Turismo and accelerating and braking as part of the first aspect of learning to drive in the game. Now, it's significant, and we're going to talk about accelerating in the next episode, but braking is in this episode. And as you see, we've got 4 schools for braking in the first row, and then we look at entering a corner while reducing speed at the same time in the second row. So that is where we're going to compare standard braking to trail braking. Now obviously the first set is literally to demonstrate the most efficient way to stop a car or slow a car down is to just brake in a straight line. 100% braking in a straight line, which is the same in real life. If you wanted to emergency stop, slam on the brakes 100% in a straight line, the ABS will take care of itself and you stop. Before we get to that little bit though, the other thing to mention with braking is that you've got to have markers. So here we've got cones. In the next one we'll have a few brake marker boards. You got advertisements on the left hand side as well. You got loads of different markers you can use as reference points to brake, and that is significant because then you can judge what you need to do to improve. So again, this is the second test. We're just going to brake in a straight line. Car comes to a stop. ABS trying to work itself out. We get the gold. Again, we're going to demonstrate this from a bit further back. As you see, we've got more brake markers this time. Again, the advertisements along the left-hand side that we can use to guide us. I think in this test, I'm going to just brake after the cones. Again, you can switch on the cones. They're very helpful. After the white cones, sorry. Brake. We could have broken a bit earlier, but even so. We still get gold, so it's absolutely fine. And then we're going to demonstrate a high power car, which obviously means you get to the stopping distance much quicker than in the Toyota GT86. I mean, you can see how fast the Bugatti Veyron is. And it's got an air brake as well, so that's additional braking that you potentially have in these cars. So now we're going to look at the Group 4 car, the Ford Mustang. We're going to just do standard braking initially. Now the Ghost is going to be trail braking, and you'll see that as you go into the corner. So if you're just doing standard braking, the whole idea here is you're just going to brake 100% in a straight line. Never brake while turning because you reduce your braking efficiency. So literally, brake in a straight line. There you go. You can see I stay to the right side. I come off the brakes. I then roll through the corner. You can see the Ghost has got ahead because of trail braking. But I will show you that lap. And I'll show you the comparison between that lap as well, or that corner, later on in the video. Because we were looking at standard braking at this point. It's all about 100% braking in a straight line. So, before we get into trail braking, I thought I'd show you this spreadsheet, which is very boring probably to most people, but it's the easiest way to explain trail braking just with numbers so you can get an idea and the logic behind it. So, a car can do 100% of something, right? Whether it's braking, accelerating, steering, weight movement, etc. It can only do 100%. It can't do 110, it's a mechanical thing. So, I've been showing you braking 100%. Slamming on 100%, coming off, rolling through the corners, or slamming on 100%, going to a complete standstill. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because if you can brake later, so say you brake 100 meters, now you can brake at 80 meters, obviously you're going to run wide at the corner, because you're 100% braking 20 meters later, which means you go 20 meters further on the track, essentially. Again, we're talking this in basic formats here. Obviously, we're not including marbles and all the other stuff. So, yeah, you run 20 meters later. But let's say you brake at that 80 meters, but then you only do 50% braking. Now, where you were braking 100 and braking 100% to make the corner, so say it's 100 to 0, you brake at 100 meters and only do 50%, it's going to take you twice as long, right? But in this situation, if we brake and start turning into the corner, we are extending that braking zone. So where we'd brake and then turn in, we're now braking and turning at the same time. Remember, they can only do 100%, the tyres, so we're braking 50%, we're steering 50%, we're turning into the corner. That distance is extended, but we're going towards the apex of the corner. Then when we get to the apex, we can start accelerating and go through the corner. Now this number can change on corner per, like, you know, literally if it's a really sharp corner, potentially you can only brake 20%. And the steering is 80%. And when that happens, obviously you're braking most of the time at 100%, and then you go to 20% and turn in. Obviously that braking will constantly change. I'm not saying you just brake at 50% and it doubles the braking distance. You brake at 100% initially, then go to, so literally 100. Maybe you do 50 meters of braking, and then you go to 50, and you start turning in, and then you're literally making the apex that way. So that is literally trail braking in a nutshell. You're literally braking, and then releasing that brake a little bit so then you can steer. The tyres can only do 100% of something. If you're braking 100%, you can't turn the car. The car will just understeer off, or potentially snap oversteer because you're braking, the whole weight transition, etc. But we'll go into weight transfer in a different episode. So that is literally trail braking. So let me show you some examples and why trail braking is now very good. So here we are with the Ford Mustang again at Willow Springs. And again, we're going to go to the right hand side, but this time rather than braking 100% and going through the corner, we're going to trail brake into the corner. And then I'll do a side-by-side comparison to show you the difference. You saw the difference on the Ghost, here it is in the flesh. So what I said before, you're going to brake 100% initially, and notice I then trail brake just under 50% up to the point of the apex. It's just before it actually, and then I go onto the accelerator. It's very, very quick trail braking. I will show you in other examples, but let's have a look at this side by side. So as you can see, left hand side is the literally video footage of non-trail braking. Right hand side is trail braking. We slowed this down even more so you can see the difference, and I've like zoomed in on the accelerator and brake so you can really see now. As you can see, exact same speeds, we're approaching the corner as we then kick off the test. There's the start. So we're going to head towards the right hand side. Now initially look at the left hand side, because I have to brake earlier on the left hand side, and you'll see that straight away. And look at the difference as we come towards the braking zone. And there we go, look at that. And I'm still accelerating on the right hand side. I'm then braking and then trail brake towards the corner. You can see that. I then release that brake. Now look at the difference in speed. I've maintained a much higher average on the right hand side than the left hand side. Now the left hand side has had a better corner because I've just accelerated out that slightly bit quicker. But overall my average speed through the corner is massive on the right hand side because I was always doing something and not necessarily just stuck there waiting for something to happen. So you can see that very clearly there that I had to brake much earlier on one than the other. Let's look at the next example. So here we are with the Bugatti Veyron Group 4 car on Dragon Trail, and it's a very nice corner, this corner that we're going to show here, because you can do it by doing 100% brake and turning in, and you can trail brake it. Trail braking is much better though. So as per normal with standard braking, you're going to pick a braking point, slam on the brake to 100%, drop down the gears, nice and easy. You can see the Ghost there already trail braking into the corner. Look at that, very last second on the apex. I come off the brakes and the Ghost and accelerate. Here I've had to roll through the corner and then I begin accelerating out the corner. Again, I've lost a significant amount of time to the trail breaker. And remember, this is only one corner and I'm losing 1-2 tenths. So when you're up over a lap, it becomes quite significant. So here's the trail braking variant of that Ghost that you just saw. So again, we're going to come down here. You'll see how late I leave the braking. I continually trail brake all the way up to the apex on this one. It's quite a good corner actually. As we come down, you see we brake much later into the braking zone. Again, coming down the gears, exact same line, but this time we start turning in. We turn in a little bit 100%. The car starts to understeer. We then come trail brake a little bit more, hit the apex, and go through the corner, accelerate out as quick as we can. Now you can do that initially to get the initial turn in, 100% braking and turn in, but generally the car will instantly start to understeer, and then you start to lose that efficiency that I mentioned earlier. Remember, 100% is all you've got. So if you brake that 100%, you're not going to brake efficiently at all. So here we go, side-by-side comparison. We're only going to do this side-by-side comparison this time because we've already done the Mustang as well. And as you can see, we're starting the same again. We've got trail braking on the right, standard braking on the left-hand side. Coming down towards the corner, have a look at the difference between the braking zones here. It's very, very, very significant. And this is the key to improving your lap with trail braking. Because if you can get it right and start doing it, you can really start shaving off tons and tons of times off your laps. So as we come down now, look at the left-hand side first. Look at that braking. And then a significant little bit of time later, we then brake on the right-hand side. We then have to let go on the left-hand side. And you notice how we continue to trail brake. So we're down to 62, 61 miles an hour on the left, down to 59, down to 58. Exact same apex speeds, which is what I was trying to demonstrate. And I managed to do it in this one particular. And then we can accelerate out the corner. Look at the acceleration differences. While the one on the left essentially has a quicker exit speed, I'm already up to the same speed on the right side. So in theory, I'm further up the track. And as you can see by the Ghost being ahead with the trail braking is quicker. So there you see the comparison and why trail braking is so significant in Gran Turismo and in racing in general. You can gain so much time per corner. I mean, even if it's 5 corners and you gain 5 tenths, that is significant. That is qualifying positions. That is race time. 5 tenths a lap, 10 laps is significant. Anyway, here we go with just a couple more examples. I'm not doing side-by-side comparisons this time. This is just the trail braking aspect. So, Lego Maggiore, we're going to come down to the right-hander. Again, this is a very trail brakey corner. So you're going to come in. Again, we get the initial little bit of turning. Camber helping us out there. Look at that trail braking. So 100 down to about 30% there. We kept it there for a little while and then exited the corner absolutely fine. Again, trail braking really helped us out. I think we gained like half a tenth to a tenth there on the actual non-trail braking Ghost there. It wasn't as significant because the camber helps anybody who can't trail brake there. But even so, it's significant. I wanted to show this one because you only trail brake for a tiny little bit of amount here at Brands Hatch, but it's still significant enough that you gain a little bit of time. It's only half a tenth, but remember, half a tenth is still significant. It's coming into here, brake, look at that trail brake, tiniest of margins, it's like 50% for not even a tenth or two, and we go around that corner absolutely no problem. So that is trail braking and standard braking. There's one little bit more type of braking I want to go into, so let's look at that next. So back to the spreadsheet, and we've added an additional row now. So one of the interesting things that happens, and it's mainly with road cars more than race cars, but it does happen in race cars as well. Group 3 it can happen quite a lot, especially with weight transfer and stuff like that. As I said, we'll go into weight transfer in a separate video, but this is a technique that you do have to use while braking occasionally, especially if the car is very oversteery and you can't adjust the brake balance to stop the oversteer. Maybe you put it all the way to the front and it still oversteers. This is that solution. As I say, it's mainly with road cars. The most recent race combo I've seen it at was when it was Dragon Trail Gardens reverse and it was the Porsche 911. You had to use this technique to get the fastest lap, and if you watch Lightning does this technique superbly. So you can see we've got Throttle on here now, and you're probably wondering why the heck is that on there when we're talking about braking. Again, a car can only do 100%. We're doing 100% braking, but then potentially the car starts to oversteer. Now, if it starts to oversteer, you may want to apply a bit of throttle, right? So we now have to knock that down to 80% and do 20% throttle. And you're probably going, well, why would you do that? So because of the way weight transfer works, and as you come into the braking zone, if you apply the throttle, you balance the car out a little bit, and it causes understeer. You need to remember, keep this in mind. It causes understeer but stops oversteer. Now, if a car is oversteering under braking, it's not braking efficiently because the rear is moving about. It's not braking in a straight line, which we talked about with the standard braking. So you apply a little bit of throttle to get the car straightened up a little bit to actually improve the braking efficiency. So that 20% throttle can actually improve the braking over 100% braking. So it suddenly gets very interesting. Obviously the steering is in there as well, so potentially you might have to do 80%, 10% steering, 10% throttle. You know, you swing these about, but suddenly your left foot, your right foot, and your hands, so all hand-eye coordination, foot coordination as well, are all having to do stuff to stop this car oversteering. And again, I've got a few examples to show this. It's mainly with the Ferrari at Alsace. But again, it will demonstrate the use of it and the difference between the braking each time I come to a specific corner. And I used this technique as well at the European finals when it was the Alsace as well, and again it was with the Ferrari. I couldn't actually get the car exactly the same, but even so I used this technique there to stop the car oversteering. So let's have a look at that now. So here we are with the 458 at Alsace, and I'm going to do this in more slow-mo than the other ones because I've only got really one example of this, and it's really hard to demonstrate anyway. So you can see the car's a bit oversteery. I've set the brake balance to +5 just to show how oversteery it can get potentially. So I'm going to come down towards this braking zone and I'm going to start braking. Now look at the car, look at how it starts to slide. You can just see that to the left. Obviously we're turning at the same time because the track does turn. We're trying to control it while 100% braking, trying to turn the car. It's not very efficient because the rear is coming out and going sideways. So you can see we're going to run deep here even though we're trail braking as well because we've tried to stop hitting the barrier essentially. And you can see we've run very deep here, not got a good line for this last section. So a couple of laps later, coming into the same section now, I'm going to use a technique that I essentially explained with a spreadsheet. So I'm going to brake, I'll be turning a little bit, and I'll also be applying a little bit of throttle. So we're coming down into this section. And the reason it's oversteer is because of the brake balance and the fact we're going downhill as well. So down into the braking section. Notice the throttle there. Look at that. It's hardly anything, but it's enough to generate understeer and stop oversteer. Again, look at that. It stops the oversteer instantly, straightens the car up, allows me to get efficient braking and therefore a good line into this corner as well. Do the same trail braking technique that I've been explaining and that I did on the previous example, except I'd stabilize the car a little bit more, and look at that line. That is far better. On the other example, I was another car width over, so therefore it would affect this corner and therefore the lap. So let's do a full lap now and you'll be able to see trail braking in action again, and also that technique that I've just explained as well. So going into this first corner, you'll see a lot of trail braking. I've gone in a little bit too deep here, so I'm trying to scrub off a little bit more speed. That's the other good thing about trail braking. If you do run deep, if you've learnt this technique, you'll be able to scrub off a little bit more speed and still turn at the same time, therefore not lose as much time as somebody who's having to slam on again 100%. So going into this next corner, you will see me apply the throttle a little bit under braking again because it's downhill, the car wants to oversteer, and there you go, you're going to see it a little bit. Now of course, you're going to see the gear changes have an effect because in Gran Turismo it goes to 100% and then back again, but the other inputs, 5, 10, 15% is all me trying to stabilise the car. And that's a significant thing here. So if you have oversteer in the braking zone, you need to stop that oversteer because your braking efficiency will be reduced. And you'll see it mostly in road cars, but you'll see it in others as well. So you might look at Lightning, who does this very well. If you watch any of his stuff with road cars, he does this exceptionally well. You might see him brake at a certain point, but like, how the hell does he brake? You might not even be able to see that oversteer, but there's a little bit of oversteer in there, enough to cause the braking to be inefficient. Therefore, if you apply this technique, and even if you don't see it, it's worth a try anyway, and you might go, ooh, actually, the car is suddenly braking a lot earlier than expected. I can brake later now, trail brake into the corner, and gain time. It's all there. So this next corner, you're about to see me run really, really deep. But again, with that technique, with trail braking, it's all about doing something with the car. Don't let it roll through the corner. Trail braking, making sure you're braking 100% initially, then just rolling off the brakes to the percentage you feel is needed to turn the car at the same time towards the apex to bleed off that last little bit of speed to then accelerate out of the corner. Remember, it's all about averages. Yeah, you may hit 90 miles an hour at the apex of the corner, but if I've got to 90 miles an hour quicker than you at the corner and still made the turn, you need to improve your trail braking at that point. So I kind of hope you've enjoyed this first episode of the driving school. I've gone through standard braking, trail braking, why trail braking is so important. You've seen the technique being used. The next one is going to be accelerating. Again, that's going to be interesting as well. But thanks very much for watching. I will see you in the next video.